Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we're going to be discussing the top transfers going into Game Week 26. Now, Game Week 25 still hasn't finished, so hopefully you're having a better game week than I am right now. But of course, with the FA Cup games this week, it is going to be a big factor on how future game weeks look. So, try not to pull the trigger early, guys, but these are going to be the top transfers that you need to consider for your transfer plan. So if you are new around here, make sure you do consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video, please do consider hitting a like to show the love. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so first up we are going to be looking at currently the most transferred in player ahead of Game Week 26, which is Ivan Toney, who has enjoyed such a fantastic season so far with Brentford. Now, it is worth noting what I mentioned previously, games for this FA Cup week are going to dictate future game weeks, and that applies for Brentford. Now, we can see the fixture ticker on the bottom here. Game Week 26, they're at home against Fulham, and Game Week 27, they have that favourable double game week away against Everton and away against Southampton. However, their Game Week 28 fixture at home to Leicester is going to depend on the result of the FA Cup. So, if Leicester beat Blackburn this evening, it means that that fixture against Leicester will be cancelled and it will be a blank game week for Brentford and Ivan Toney. Now, that's not to forget that in Game Week 29, they then have a double, which is away against Brighton and away against Man United. So Brentford, a very tricky team to navigate if you are planning on bringing them in and they blank in Game Week 28. However, I think Ivan Toney is worth the hassle for your teams. Looking at the fixtures coming up first and foremost, they are some of the best of any team. And Ivan Toney, as a forward, is one of the best value around. Now, looking at his underlying stats, you can see on the screen here, these are taken from Game Week 17 to Game Week 25. So basically post-World Cup. Expected goals per 90 at 0.66 is actually the third best of all forwards since the World Cup. So he really is delivering in this Brentford side and is such a focal point in the team. And even with expected assists per 90 of 0.16, I really do feel like he is such a good varied asset. Obviously on penalties, offering the goal threat, but also a little bit of chance creation in this team. But the one I want to draw your attention to is the bonus points per 90 at 1.31 is by far and away the best of any forward since the World Cup. So as I mentioned, if he is getting on the score sheet, being that talisman, he is going to be racking up those bonus points for you, which is really important when we are considering FPL options. As I discussed in previous videos, that's the difference between good FPL options and great FPL options, and that is their bonus point potential. Now, looking at the predicted points for Game Week 26, with that favourable home game against Fulham, who are without the suspended Paulinho, which is worth noting, that is going to be a big factor for Brentford in this game. 5.8 projected points is really solid for the forwards in that game week. And looking over game weeks 26 to 28, he is projected to score 20.9 points. Now, it is worth noting that, of course, game week 28 is still up in the air depending on the results of the FA Cup. So if he was to blank in game week 28, those projected points would come down over the next 3 game weeks. But as a reminder, Game Week 29 is a double for Brentford, so it means Toney's points are only then going to be elevated over a 4 game week period. So I really think we need to make sure we have that in the back of our minds. Now, what are the problems of Ivan Toney? Well, first and foremost, as I said, Game Week 28 could become a problem if it is a blank, may require you to either free hit or play without 11 players that game week, which I think is perfectly fine for that Game Week 28. And the other issue is he is currently on 8 yellow cards. If he was to receive 2 more yellow cards, he will be suspended for 2 Premier League games. So if you bring him in this week, he gets a yellow against Fulham, you are going to be treading on eggshells over that double game week, praying that he doesn't pick up that 10th yellow card to give him that 2-game ban. But still, even with that risk there, I still think he's a fantastic transfer into your teams. And for those managers right now, sat there with Darwin Núñez, who is an injury risk going into the second half of his Game Week 25 fixtures, I feel like this is a really easy downgrade for a lot of managers out there. If you want to bring in a player, save some money in the bank, and looking at the underlying stats for Ivan Toney, I really think you're bringing in a fantastic alternative to Darwin Núñez with those guaranteed doubles in 27 and game week 29. But I'd be really interested to know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Are you planning on bringing in Ivan Toney? For me personally, it is definitely a transfer that I'm considering for game week 26. And if not game week 26, definitely in game week 27. Please do let me know, guys. Right, next up, we're going to be looking at Aston Villa and their attackers. So, guys, on screen here, you can see a 3-player comparison between Watkins, Buendia and Bailey. Now, a quick reminder, Watkins is a forward in FPL. Both Buendia and Bailey are midfielders and, of course, vary in price ranges. You can see that on your screens there. Now, the reason why we have Aston Villa players on our screens is because they are one of the unique teams where they have fixtures in every single game week. And when we discuss the potential blanks coming up for the likes of Brentford, for the likes of Brighton, I really think having the balance of teams like Aston Villa, like even Chelsea, who can roll out players each and every game week. So just to give you a quick rundown of the Aston Villa fixtures coming up, game week 26 at home against Crystal Palace, 27 away against West Ham, 28, and remember that is going to be a big blank game week. They're at home against Bournemouth, which I would argue is one of the best fixtures you could have, in particular in a blank game week. And then game week 29, they have a double away against Chelsea and away against Leicester, followed by in game week 30, a home game against Nottingham Forest. So these fixtures are fantastic for Aston Villa, and they are a team right now, even though they aren't winning every single game, they are posting some good numbers and actually scoring goals in most games. And first up, we're going to come to Watkins right now, who is one of the most informed forwards in the league. 5 goals, 1 assist in his last 5 league games. As I mentioned, he is in fantastic form, and it's worth noting his expected goals over the last 5 league games is 3.06, with his expected assists at 0.27. So, of course, he is overperforming these underlying stats, but even still, his expected goals is the best of any forward over the last 5 league games at 3.06. Even though he's overperforming that is still fantastic underlying stats for a player only priced at 7.2 million. Now, factors in regards to Watkins, as I discussed about Darwin Núñez coming down to Ivan Toney, Watkins offers the exact same resolution for you guys there. If you need to come down to a cheaper forward, Watkins is definitely a consideration for your teams. In particular, if you don't plan on using your free hit in game week 28, I think Watkins is a brilliant alternative to Ivan Toney if you are worried about the blank game week. For me personally, I still don't know whether I want to use my free hit in 28, and because of that very reason, Watkins feels like the better option if I want to navigate those double and blank game weeks. Even though we don't get the double in 27, we are getting that double game week in 29. And I feel like that is enough, knowing that he has that brilliant game week 28 home fixture against Bournemouth. Now, moving on to Buendia, as I mentioned, a midfielder. This guy is somebody who's definitely not getting a lot of love in the FPL community, but I do think when we do come around to game week 28, could see an influx in transfers in for him. Now, 3 goals and 1 assist since the World Cup. He has been delivering, considering he has been getting limited minutes. He's started games, but has rarely finished the 90 minutes. And he was a sub in game week 25, but he did come on and score in that fixture. And talking to a lot of Aston Villa fans, they do believe that Buendia deserves a start in this Aston Villa team. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that substitution be a rarity that we saw in game week 25. I would expect him to start more games than he was to be benched. And looking at his underlying stats here, 0.15 expected goals per 90 since the World Cup and 0.10 per 90 since the World Cup. So numbers that aren't necessarily jumping off the page for us here. But at 5.7 as a midfielder who we know has fixtures in every single game week, I don't mind him if you are looking to maybe go to an alternative rather than a Brighton midfielder. Now, of course, the big chances are nothing when we are looking at the likes of Watkins, but still okay at 0.28 per 90. Now, last one we need to quickly touch on is Leon Bailey at 4.4 million, the other spectrum of cheap. It is worth mentioning, and it has been very much a stop-start season for Leon Bailey. Deployed as a front 2 from time to time alongside Watkins, but also being a major minutes risk under Unai Emery. Now, 1 goal and 1 assist since the World Cup, which came in the same game in their home fixture against Leeds. I personally haven't seen enough from Leon Bailey to even consider him as an FPL option. Yes, his underlying numbers are okay from a goal threat perspective. 0.25 expected goals per 90, 0.28 big chances per 90. But realistically, if we are bringing in a player like Leon Bailey to navigate game week 28, I need to know that he is starting that game. And I would much rather pay the additional 1.3 million to bring in someone like Buendia, who I think is a better goal threat and a higher expected minutes than someone like Leon Bailey. But again, guys, please do let me know in the chat what your thoughts are. But to reel him off, Bailey not a consideration for me. Buendia a good alternative if you don't want to go down the Brighton route. And Watkins an amazing alternative to Ivan Toney if you want to navigate game week 28 without using your free hit and you're worried about that Brentford blank. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. So last up, we're going to be looking at another mid-price midfielder that is absolutely on my radar. And that is going to be Brighton's McAllister. Now, this man has not had as much love in the FPL community compared to his midfield compatriots. Mitoma and March have been the hot topic of every single video, it seems. Debating which one to go for. Mitoma 1 week picking up the spoils, the next week March picking up the spoils. Especially on this channel, we have been discussing it to death. But it's been very rare that McAllister has entered the fray. Now, before we touch on the actual player itself, we need to discuss about Brighton, as again, FA Cup results are going to dictate their future fixtures. You can see on the fixture ticker here, game week 26, the home fixture against West Ham, good fixture. And in game week 27, they have a guaranteed double away against Leeds and at home against Crystal Palace. Again, a favourable double game week. But game week 28 is more than likely going to be a blank game week for Brighton. Just to give you an idea, they have to beat Stoke. That will mean it'll be a blank. Or Man United have to beat West Ham. Realistically, guys, if Man United aren't beating West Ham, then I expect Brighton to beat Stoke in the Cup. So because of that very reason, guys, I would anticipate game week 28 to be a blank for Brighton. And then we are having the same situation as we had with Ivan Toney and Brentford, where we're having favourable game week 26, good double game week 27, blank in game week 28, and then they have a really good double in 29 at home against Brentford and away against Bournemouth. So again, guys, it comes down to the same sort of profile as Brentford. Even if they blank in game week 28, I still think it is worth going in on Brighton assets, whether it be McAllister, whether it be Mitoma, whether it be an Estupiñán or a Dunk in defence. That game week 28 shouldn't put you off because the double in 27 and the double in 29 are far too good to ignore. Now, looking at the stats here on the screen for McAllister, these are post-World Cup. You can see expected goals per 90 at 0.44, expected assists per 90 at 0.09, big chances are the real one here per 90 at 0.94. Posting some really, really solid numbers. But the reason why I'm so attracted to McAllister right now is because of the injury that was sustained to Adam Lallana. Previous to when Lallana was in the team, we were seeing Caicedo and McAllister deployed as a double pivot, with McAllister having slight license to get forward, Lallana playing in the number 10 role. However, since game week 21, when Lallana was off injured in their 2-2 draw against Leicester, McAllister had been deployed much more as a 10 in this Brighton system. Now, I just want to reel off some numbers here just to give you a highlight on how this has impacted his underlying stats. Prior to the Lallana injury, this is from game week 1 to game week 21, McAllister's numbers were expected goals per 90, 0.23, shots per 90, 1.91. and shots in the box per 90, 0.31. Now, since the Lallana injury, so basically from game weeks 22 to 25, where McAllister has played as a more advanced position, just going to reel off some numbers here. Expected goals per 90, 0.84. Now, previously it was 0.23, so a massive uptake in his expected goals per 90. Shots per 90, 5.5. Before that Lallana injury, it was 1.91. Again, massive numbers here. And shots in the box per 90, he is averaging 4 per 90 compared to his 0.31 prior to the Lallana injury. Now, it is a very small sample size, but if we do continue to see this sort of trend, I really think McAllister is a fantastic option for our teams. Now, it's worth noting, 0 attacking returns since the World Cup. So even though his underlying numbers are so incredibly promising, he still hasn't delivered as an FPL option. And it's why Mitoma and March are still being the popular transfers in for managers, because they are actually delivering the goods for them week in, week out. But I really think if you're looking for a differential pick in that Brighton midfield, based on the underlying numbers that we've seen and the anticipation that Lallana is still out for a couple more weeks, McAllister would be the punt that I would go for, especially if you're someone like me, not at a rank that you're happy with, and maybe want to have that slight differential to what a lot of other popular managers have in their teams. I think McAllister could be the route to go for. And with projected points of 14.3 over the next 3 game weeks, he is looking like a brilliant option. But just have a reminder in the back of your heads that game week 28 likely to be a blank game week for Brighton. So guys, that is going to wrap up today's game week 26 top transfers. I really hope it's provided some value. It is definitely given me a slight idea of what direction I want to go with my team. And I will be discussing my transfer plans in Friday's live stream. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and make sure you do like this video if you did enjoy it. And I will see you in the next video, guys. Take care. Cheers.